Hey Nick, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Olaf. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Great to see you join again.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I actually um was just looking. I was glad that it worked in my time slot here. So I think you said you're 8 p.m. your time, or
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's 8 p.m. over here.
yeah, and so that's just after the noon hour. So take a late
Ah, so
lunch
you're
here. So
CST then, right?
yeah, yep, yep, exactly. CST.
Sweet. So how have you been?
Pretty good, pretty good. Now that Microsoft did fix the bug with Sysmon, that wasn't crashing a bunch of stuff, so that's been nice.
Yeah, and they even added some
Um,
treats, right, in the last
yeah,
update. I
yep,
really like the even the parent username and so on. It's pretty nice.
yes, yep, yep. And I went through and I saw that, and I mapped out, and I could see all those additional ones, and so I was happy to see that those additional details. So that was also great.
So how's it been performing now? Have you rolled it out already at scale?
Yeah, yep, yep. So we did that probably within the first couple of days after it was released. We got that out there immediately. So, yep, we got that across, 9,000 plus endpoints. So it's good.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I actually finished a project at a client at the beginning of last month somewhere, and they also started rolling it out across similar size, I guess. Um, so I supported them building pipelines to create a set of custom configs automatically based on my Git repo plus their own customizations. It's pretty nice. It works really well.
That's awesome. Good to hear. How's the Linux sysmon? Have you actually deployed that in any productional state yet, or what's the status on your exposure and using the sysmon for Linux?
To be honest, it's not much further than playing with it. Um,
Okay.
I have couple of customers that are looking at it as well, and I've seen some stuff on Twitter, but it's gaining not as much traction yet as the Windows version. That's probably also because it's so
Okay.
new. But so
Mm-hmm.
far, everybody that I've spoken to is quite happy with it. It's not really impacting performance or anything like that. No real bugs
Mm-hmm.
that I've heard of. So it seems quite stable. And apart from that, yeah, I think it's quite interesting, especially how much they already have in there, and probably if you can see what will be added. It's
Mm-hmm.
quite a nice alternative to Audit D, which is still way more powerful, but definitely not as nice to configure.
Mm-hmm.
And what about you? Do you
Yeah.
have a Linux install base over there, or not really yet?
Oh, not really. We don't have much Linux to begin with, so it's something we haven't really tested quite thoroughly. Yeah, we have quite a few other projects and things we want to get through before we add another tool to the arsenal here. So, but I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like on some of our test servers and some of the telemetry we can get from our Linux systems, because we do run a different EDR product that does gather those things, but it would be interesting to see what we can do from the Sysmon perspective.
All
So,
right, you mentioned
uh,
it last time, yeah. So
mhm.
how do you run Sysmon on the Windows base then? Is it next to the EDR?
Yes, yep, absolutely, because our EDR doesn't gather all the things that Sysmon would. So, so yeah, absolutely have that as another set of telemetry in event that our EDR doesn't have it, and kind of other way around. So there is definitely some overlap, but it's worth having both.
Hello.
Hey Jeffrey,
Good day,
welcome.
good day.
And
Is
and and
that the Jeffrey? I think.
Yep, Nick, welcome.
Oh man, it's been a
Small
while.
world, right?
Yeah, how's it going?
I'm doing all right. Busy as always.
Nice.
Good.
Small world, man.
I have a different role now, so I get to do a bit less with the technical stuff from the hive and such, but
Okay.
still, I try to do stuff with automation, but like migrations keep on chasing me for some reason. So I'm now more or less migrating all crap to Sentinel and from other virus products to Defender, and yeah, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
Corporates. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's my life currently.
Okay, right on. Olaf, it's just kind of funny because Jeffrey and I go back just a little bit, mainly when we, work together on some of, things when it comes to the Hive community but yeah, so it's just kind of funny that it's been quite a while. But I'm in the same spot I was, Jeffrey. I'm still at the state of South Dakota. Here in the
Nice.
States, and just working on the Security Operations Center and just improving upon the things that we've talked about long ago, and just even more automation and just continue to grow out our SOC. So, but yeah, things are well over here.
Cool stuff. What are you using for automation nowadays? Still
Still using Node-RED.
Node-RED? Yeah.
Node-RED, yep. I think that's been, from what I can tell, has been the way to roll, and it's been working very, very well for us. So probably stick with that until we run up against any limitations. So Node-RED is
makes
definitely
sense.
the automation platform. And actually, we kind of augmented it with some logic apps. So Node-RED and the logic apps in Microsoft, because there's some cool stuff that you can do with Teams, right, and other Office aspects. So, but yeah.
Nice.
That's pretty cool. I've never seen anybody use that as a sort of SOAR or orchestration tool. But it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's huge. It works well if you've got a nice platform to be able to automate with. So the Node-RED will be your orchestration, right, to be able to push things, move things around, maybe from your SIM to your security response platform. But again, depending on what you have hooks into, and what your expertise is when it comes to maybe some basic fundamental programming knowledge, to be able to say, okay, take this JSON data, transform it, send it to this tool, and that's again really the integrations and using that, like you kind of said there, Olaf, as the SOAR, really kind of comes down to very customized. Of course, the disadvantage of that is you got to have the people to make sure that we upkeep that, make sure it works, it's healthy, and that type of stuff. Sure. But that's one of our focuses in our requirements is if you work for us, you got to have that scripting and programming knowledge to be that much more efficient and effective. So yeah, absolutely, it's definitely, if you like to tweak and mess around with some scripting and stuff, definitely advise you to check it out and see what you can do with it with some of your tool sets and how you can pull things together and automate some of those mundane tasks.
Yes, yeah, but that's the case with every SOAR, I guess, that you need at least some programming skills, because some of them
anymore
try to sell it as the one-stop shop, and you just point click and it will get fixed, but that's never the case, right? So
no, it never is. No,
and it's not rocket science. Most of it is JSON based anyway, so it's relatively easy to parse. But I'll definitely give it a look. It seems quite nice. It looks a little bit like some of the other solutions.
Or is it paid software? I kind of forgot.
I think it looks open source. There's a GitHub, and apparently it's former IBM.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's maybe a red flag, but apart from that, it's pretty cool that they open sourced it then.
Yeah.
And
nice.
it has a ton of stars on GitHub, so it's 13.5K. So it seems quite active.
Yeah. It's solid. It's solid, and I'll just post in the live chat Q&A a link to kind of what bolstered us in actually leveraging it, because we're leveraging the Hive as a security incident response platform. And Adrian Good, I believe his name is, has an awesome blog out there on how he leverages these things, create alerts wherever your sources are, pump them into the Hive, and how to use Node-RED to do that, and you get those fundamentals down. Replace the Hive with pick your tool to be able to do those things in your sources and work through those. So this is one of many, but it is open source, and you can do a lot with it. I think it's very underrated and very powerful.
I have
For
a question for you there.
Yeah.
Are you going to stick with the Hive? As it's going to be paid as of 2020, end of 2020.
Well, that's up for debate. We still have a lot of questions around that. We're going to keep moving forward with what we've got, but we'll have to evaluate that and see what the costs are and the cost and value of the product when it comes to that point. But at this point, it's just leverage where we can. But it's definitely something we need to consider because that's a big haul and change between what their current version is. But it's a great question.
Yeah, because I was interested.
Yeah, so the current version will be completely deprecated then?
Well, they are. Well, I think they will have a sort of free version, but it will not contain webhooks, so automations is no go automatically. And you're only allowed to do one user. So basically, you can send stuff to it, and that's it. And you can probably do some automations with Cortex, but that's pretty limited in terms of what you actually want to do with it. So, yeah, I hope they don't stab their own foot there, to be honest, because they're not cheap as well. Like I have been in some of the negotiations, and some of those just blow my mind. Like what they really ask enterprise prices. Now it's up for bargain, so you can negotiate, but they start out pretty high.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah, they've probably seen how well the Misto has been doing under the Palo Alto flag and some of the other ones.
Yeah,
but
perhaps. That's what they do. They just look at the market and say, "Oh, we compare with that, so we ask the same price."
Yeah. Weird. Well, it's gonna be interesting to see because it's one of the few open source solutions that's actually really solid.
Yeah, but you have to you really have to adapt to the profile. Like the workflow that is in the Hive, you have to work with it, or it will work against you. And that's what I'm encountering right now. Is that people that they came from Jira, and they want to use the Hive, but they want to do it their way, and we're just continuously fighting it to get it working in a sort of way that matches both worlds. But I think we'll never get to that point. But yeah, other than that, I think it can be a very valuable project. You just have to adopt it.
Oh yeah, I'm just looking at the price. It is quite steep, like 5K a month. It's quite a lot of money for.
Yeah, I was considering building one myself. It's a good fee, man.
It is. Well, yeah, with the whole Cortex engine behind it, it's quite powerful, of course, because it doesn't really compare to some of the other source solutions out there, but it's
true.
Well, you can buy for the same money. You can buy probably a more mature product.
You can buy a developer and build that deal.
That too, yeah. But then you need to maintain it yourself, right? That's the problem.
Yeah,
that's also
true.
still why people rather buy tools than build in-house. Even Sysmon, for that matter, is sometimes complicated because they can't maintain it themselves.
Yeah, so maybe we should go back on topic. It's supposed to be
That was not intentional, but yeah, I'm open to anything, and everybody's welcome to chip in, right? But I'm still curious, Nick, on how you deploy it. Is it your Sysmon next to the EDR? Is it augmenting only, or is it sort of in parallel?
In parallel, so we do a full-blown Sysmon and a full-blown EDR. And one can feed the other depending on what it looks like, because I haven't seen that either or can have all the information that we seek, especially with the new features that Sysmon is adding, like the file deletion events, right, where it can actually record and store those deleted files and have a record of the actual files themselves that live on the systems that we can then acquire and take, or the again, like I said, the registry events was a next tier up of our EDR, and it's like, well, is it worth paying that much more if we can already get the visibility there? Because how much do we need that in the EDR solution itself? So we do deploy it in parallel, that Sysmon's there, EDR's there. And when we leverage the Sysmon events, we take it to, I don't know, when we have the things in the sim, it's a lot easier for us because our ADR solution, we don't pull all those things into the sim, only the relevant alerts, because it's just so much more information. But yeah, so I guess I guess the short answer is, yeah, we run those in parallel and absolutely have them, and then we make sure we have exclusions for the EDR to make sure Sysmon doesn't get negated or diluted in any way, and then make sure we can get those things working. So does that kind of answer your question there?
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. I have a couple of clients that do it that way, but not too many because it's quite a lot of overhead, right? So you have to ingest two streams of
Well,
data and build detections on two different data sets.
yes and no. And so this is where, if you look at it, Olaf, if you're using a EDR solution that's in the cloud, there's not as much that we're trying to bring in because we don't want to bring the redundancy of that data. It's a good, have that 60-day window. If we need more, we'll keep the alerts and more specific data longer into our SIM. And we actually built our own integration to pull the EDR data into our SIM, using actually Node-RED to constantly query the APIs and bring the data into our SIM. But really, it's not that much because it's more for us on the EDR side, is we want the response capabilities, we want the prevention stuff. The visibility is okay, but we've had Sysmon for so long that we've become so accustomed to it that any EDR solution isn't blowing us away with visibility. It's just not that impressive. That's why Sysmon's here to stay. And that leads me to my next point is, let's say our EDR solution, something comes up and we want to look for a different one and we have to replace that entirely. Well, that's no problem. Let's do that. Do away with that EDR solution, get a new one, and we can still have our Sysmon, our core fundamental visibility that we have from day to day. So it gives us the flexibility. If we want to get a new EDR every year, we could do that. We have that flexibility because we were so accustomed to Sysmon in the beginning and the telemetry that it provides. So that's kind of I guess, benefit if you can kind of stick with Sysmon all the time. Have that as your main source, but then use other sets of tool sets on top of it if you can make it work without too much overhead. Because I can imagine there could be some instances where that might be the case, but we factor that into our decision-making process.
Yeah, I'm totally down with you. That's my generic advice to most clients. However, not all of them have a quite mature team to manage the Sysmon part. So then
Sure.
I'd rather have them focus on having a good EDR and leveraging the most from that. But in your case, it makes total sense, and I think it's still the nice way to go. Also, because from an attacker perspective, I see a lot of them attacking EDRs and AVs, but it's quite rare to see them challenge Sysmon in the first place. Simply because
that's
I guess
a purple team task, of a red team task.
yeah. Red teamers do it just to annoy the blue teamers, but most real attackers don't really care for it because it's not really stopping them, or they are not aware that it exists. But I think that is not the best argument. But probably it doesn't hinder them in doing whatever they like to do. So they just YOLO past the EDR and forget about dealing with Sysmon. But then you at least have that telemetry there.
So for how many endpoints do you have Sysmon running then, Nick?
Over 9,000.
Oh, that's quite a lot. Because I always hear the performance part of the data coming in. They always keep complaining about that. But how is it on your end?
So we started off with Swift on security as our configuration file. Use that quite a bit, but we did a lot of very heavy tuning because of the tools in our infrastructure. You got inventory software, you got scanning, you got all kinds of things that are just so noisy to begin with, and it's very obvious. And we had the foundation of leveraging the Elastic Stack to see, what does the Sysmon configs do for us? And we had a very small test case, so we got maybe 10, 20 systems in there. We get the very obvious things, and then we deployed out basically our different agencies at a time. So maybe 100 here, 100 there. Pretty soon we're up to a few thousand, and we're constantly looking at this and finding, hey, let's look at the top, and we have dashboards, a Sysmon dashboard to give me the most verbose events and say, okay, this specific command line by this process, this is taking up 50% of our events. Do we need this? Is there any point in time where this is going to be of value to us? If not, we're going to exclude that, put that in the config, and then move on to the next thing. And so we've definitely over time built up a very very lean config file based on what that Swift on security was. And then when we've swapped over to Olaf's configuration, we took all of our previous things that we've added, bundled that in. That didn't make sense. There was no overlap. That way we can actually continue to maintain that and see, because it's really obvious when there's an event that is very performance when you talk about the log ingestion side. Now, if you're talking about on the system side, there's been very rarely issues we've seen where Sysmon's causing performance issues, unless it's something to the effect of some interoperability issues with Sysmon and maybe an anti-malware, antivirus solution, or maybe some other things happening on the operating system where we just lock up the system. But they're very, very small use cases. Like I said, out of 9,000, we might get 10 or 15 devices every now and again that it seems that if we kill Sysmon, it starts working again. But we don't know of how much of that's actually Sysmon's fault or a bad driver and things like that. But really, a lot of it is putting the effort into the config. It's all about the config. It's all about knowing what your data is, what you're looking at, researching it, and making sure that, hey, this is an event that never, ever should I ever need to be able to log this. And so, again, there are some risks with that, of course, as you know, but generally speaking, there is enough situational awareness for our environment that we can go ahead and add those specific exclusions in and then be on our way to maintain. But it's a little bit, I mean, we haven't had to add anything in probably 5 to 6 months, because it's just one of those things that we do as needed. And there might be a new product that might come out that we might have to deploy it to all 9,000 plus endpoints. And if we see, hey, our log volume jumped up another 1,000 events per second, okay, well, let's take a look at that and see if that's something that we can reduce down. But having a dashboard to monitor Sysmon's health in general is the biggest step that we took to be able to keep a handle on that, so we don't get overwhelmed and just wasting lots of resources because we're logging everything. Because I'm not really behind that mindset that you should absolutely log every single thing that's possible, because there is a lot of information that is just not relevant, and you're going to be spending terabytes and terabytes of storage that might not be relevant to your use case. And that's kind of my opinion, but that's kind of the way that we looked at it. Is we started small, we had a dashboard, and that's all we focus on is how lean can we get these events so we can do this at scale as we moved out.
Yeah, so are you aware of your current intake on an average machine?
Yes.
How much data it is per day?
Yeah, I'll get that for you here. Give me a minute.
Shouldn't be a lot, right? On workstations, at least.
Oh, you're still working, probably, aren't you, Nick?
Always.
Well, it's during daytime now, right?
Oh yeah, it's just right after the noon hour. So, we are. Let me check my pipeline here. So. I'll adjust this here to give us a good sample size. We're roughly across the 9,000 plus endpoints. I might have to take in consideration some of my other event logs here, but I would say we're well under 3,000 events per second across everything. So you take that 3,000 divided by your 9,000 endpoints. It's really not that
decent.
bad. Yeah, it's really not that bad. And so, and some of the exclusions that were initially in there, we might have replaced and taken out because we wanted to get more information. An example of that is a lot of the DNS events. I actually want to know all the DNS events from my browsers because most of the time I need to know this stupid signature that's firing. Is this because it's a browser or is it because we actually have malware on the system? And so most of the time, using like the network connection events, if I don't have the browser in there, and it's like, okay, well, I might not have that data because I excluded the browser, and I just don't want to make that assumption. So we've included, okay, yeah, literally Chrome is making that connection out to that malicious IP, which might have been just a stupid ad or something to that effect. So there have been some of the other things where we've actually taken out some exclusions to get more visibility as well. But generally speaking, this has been very helpful for us. So I would say less than 3,000 events a second, which is pretty small in comparison to much larger sources like your network traffic, right?
Yeah,
We have pushed in like way over,
It's a
13,000
useless
events a
fire
second just in
hose.
network. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So there you go.
Oh, that's pretty decent. I think the last project I ran, they did about 8 MB on average a day per workstation, and the servers were slightly more. And I know that Tomoyoshi, probably butchering his name, but he works at Swiss Post, and he runs it at 25,000 endpoints and about 5 megs a day per workstation. So they tweaked a lot, and probably they have some blind spots that they know of. But that's still quite manageable, right? Even on a Splunk. Hey, Mauricio's there. Hey, buddy.
And he's gone.
All right. He's trying again. He's probably having problems connecting. But so yeah, it depends a little bit on how verbose you want to have it. But you can tailor it quite down, or you can go full noisy, and then it's probably like 40 megs a day per workstation. But then it really depends on your logging solution, what you want to pay for it, and how well you're off with your EDR. Some EDRs really, are not that great. So then you probably want to have a little bit more. But once you're satisfied with what you have, I mean, I work a lot with Defender. Having it next to Sysmon is quite nice. But I do know that some of the other EDRs are kind of miserable. So having a little bit more visibility on that end then is kind of useful.
So in the end, Sysmon is always good to have.
Well, yeah, if you can manage to deal with it, definitely. There's probably, if you have a very small SOC, or not even a SOC, but a guy that also manages security next to some other stuff, then it can still be nice to run it, but not ingest it. So I also know a client that runs it, but doesn't ingest it because they have an EDR, they handle those alerts. But every time they have an alert and you might want to do some more IR, they look on the box and then they start querying the Sysmon data. So at least they have some additional visibility when it's really, really necessary. It's not ideal, of course, because if an attacker just removes the logs locally, or it's cycled or whatever, badly configured, you're still blind. But at least it's more than nothing.
Yeah. Well, you can always choose to put it in like cold storage right away.
That's also an option.
Then,
yeah.
Yeah. Then you have it. At least it doesn't consume that much, and especially for smaller customers, most of them they don't have that many machines.
No, that's also a fair point. Yeah, that's definitely that's also definitely a good idea. I sometimes even see people utilizing Velociraptor on top of that as well, just to be able to hunt live.
I've never used Velociraptor, to be honest.
Yeah, I haven't used it in a while, but I really like it. It's I'm not sure if you ever worked with either Carbon Black Response or Google GER or some of the other live incident response tools, but it's quite similar. I think they have their own query language, but it has the ability to also you have full computer access basically. So it's it's almost a command and control server. But it allows you to do all kinds of live queries, run Jira scans. You can even dump memory. You can do everything you want remotely. So it's quite powerful. So one of the things that I'm looking for now, but you can even deploy it and let it collect stuff and upload it to AWS or some other bucket at Azure or wherever. So what you can do is pre-configure it, and even through Defender for Endpoint, for instance, execute it and have it upload all the telemetry that you need to a blob storage and examine it from there. So you don't even need to pull all kinds of manual data, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
You can probably even automate that with that SOAR that we were talking about. That
Another red. Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, if you have a way through your EDR or some other solution to push that agent and have it execute, it will automatically gather all the data that you configure it to gather, or run a Yara scan or whatever.
Yeah. One day I'll try to look at it.
Yeah, there's too many stuff to play with, right?
Yeah,
Even
way
getting,
too many.
Getting an EDR fully utilized is already quite a challenge for some teams.
Yeah, I wrote my first Go script last weekend.
Cool.
Yeah, also pretty interesting. I am trying to work my way around the open source Elasticsearch. It bothered me that it didn't had any. Outgoing webhooks are not free there as well. So I built a notifier that just queries the SIM index, and then still sends me out the data I want. So now I have a notifier again based on sort of webhooks. So now I can do Slack notifications again.
Sweet. It's also interesting the route that Elastic was taking for a bit. The interesting bit was also where Amazon figured like, okay, fuck it, then we'll just fork it and run our own version.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. All these. Yeah. I understand it though, right? So they spend a lot of time developing it, building it out. So they want to earn some more money from it. But the way they did it wasn't really nice. And it's the same with the Hive. No. I guess they probably spend way more time than I can imagine on developing and improving the product.
Yeah,
but going
exactly.
from there with a huge install base to okay, let's try to squeeze some big bucks out of it. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I guess it's.
I mean, you can't fault them.
No, and I think they're on the. How do you call it? The Beurs?
Oh, really? They went to the stock exchange?
Yeah, I think so.
I
was really afraid that it was that will break Elastic. But
oh,
for now,
Elastic? Yeah. Elastic did IPO. Yeah, but they're doing quite well. I mean, they acquired Endgame, of course, as well, which is pretty. Well, it's called Elastic EDR, I guess now. But
endpoint stuff.
Yeah, still, it's a pretty good tool. So. Yeah, I don't encounter them a lot, but that's maybe also the bubble that I live and work in due to my work with all the Microsoft tools and Splunk. That most
it's
clients
not very popular.
Don't really approach me. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe it is. I really don't know. Oh yeah.
Where they asked me to help because in my former company I built up Elasticsearch. Well, I was building the SIM before it became a SIM. But there I was working with it a lot, and I was talking to this guy who was also doing a startup, and now I moved away from that company. He asked me, well, maybe you can help me because we now have some requirements to start monitoring and such. Can you help us build the security around it? So now I'm working with Elastic again, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. And I'm very interested in the part where I think they gave a small piece of free EDR. I never seen what it resulted in, but I'm gonna try that soon.
Yeah, I played with it on release. It was interesting. It's fun. It's quite limited. But again, it's free, so you can't really butcher it. I think the telemetry looks a bit like the structure looks a bit like the Sysmon structure. In some cases, it might even be better, but I can't really recall.
Okay.
But probably all the good stuff you still have to build yourself, because that's also where they earn their money from, of course. But some
Yeah,
basic detections
definitely.
are in there. And if you scroll back a little bit on Twitter, there was a guy that released all the rules from the commercial one. So technically, you could also
Oh, really?
yeah, he decompiled the full configuration and put it on GitHub. And
Wow.
Elastic took it really cool though. They basically embraced it in a way. So they acted really professional. Probably they didn't really like it, but yeah, it's probably still out there somewhere. I dumped it
Yeah.
at some point. So you can see a lot of their rule logic. You can see their configuration, what they do and do not monitor. Not completely, but at least quite a bit. So probably a lot of it can be replicated as well. That's why I just saved it to have a look at, to see if I can get some new ideas from it.
Yeah, exactly. So what is your experience? You have also looked into the Sysmon for Linux.
Yeah. Nick was
Right.
also asking me. I've played with it. I had all the betas and the end release, but apart from that, I haven't really deployed it at scale yet. I think we were at some point comparing it to the Defender for Endpoint agent. And in a lot of cases, it has more telemetry than Defender for Endpoint on Linux, at least logs to its central portal. So you can technically build better detections with Sysmon currently. I do know that Defender for Endpoint gets a new Linux agent somewhere next year, so that will be probably a lot better. But currently, it's not great.
Oh.
Technically, it's also just a Bitdefender with a sort of Microsoft layer around it. So they've been quite transparent about that, but they wanted to have some presence in the Linux and Mac space, and they just bought Bitdefender licenses.
Okay. And how do you think it compares and holds up to the other daemon in that case?
Oh,
Other than the shit logging, but
yeah. Well, the logging is good, but the configuration is horrible. I think I think it's pretty nice. I think
the logging. You mean the logging of Sysmon or the logging of other daemon?
well, if you configure AutoD well, it should be quite okay, but it's not as rich in terms of logging than Sysmon does. So what they also do on Windows is where they cache quite a lot of information about processes, hashes, these kind of things, and augment that in all the other event types. And they have the global unique ID, which is quite powerful, which you don't get with regular AutoD logging at least. So these kind of things I really like.
Yeah, true.
In terms of visibility, yeah, it's probably similar. Just it's a lot easier to configure.
Yeah. Well, I always had like back in the day, I had to put those logs into a curator instance. But they have like every audit log has, 5 events. They come in separately. That forms the total message. So you have to like multi-line them, and then, and that was really horrible. So back when I started using Elastic, it was nice because they have audit beat where they just like do everything for you, and they did. Then it looked a bit more like Sysmon. But I would say if I heard it from you now, then I'm going to take a look at that Sysmon for Linux soon because
No, it's really nice. I think the amount of logging types is probably more what you can get from AutoD now still, but most of it that you really need in the beginning is definitely already in Sysmon.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. You can even see the user context and so on, where it's running from, and it's kind of nice. I think even the terminal sessions are logged, if I remember correctly. So it's quite rich already in terms of data.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, I'm gonna put that on my short list.
Yeah, and there's a guy, old Greg, is asking a question on YouTube where he has anyone had issues with Sysmon 13.3, specifically with Event ID 16 not capturing the hash of the config file? Yeah, I actually saw that as well. I forgot to. I still need to reach out to the sysinternals guys. So every time you load a new config, you should get the hash of the config. but in the most latest version, I also haven't seen that anymore. So it's kind of gone, which is annoying because it's a
Are you
nice way
streaming
to
on YouTube?
monitor. Yeah, I'm trying.
Oh.
Apparently, it works because people are listening. Um, but so last call, it was quite busy, and a lot of people couldn't join. So everybody asked if I could record it, but I'm not sure how to record it directly from Discord. So I figured let's stream it to YouTube. And if I need to share anything, I can also do that because I can do video there. But on Discord, last time there were 40 people in the call, and then you go over the limit. I think it's with 25 you can still do screen sharing, and then above that it's not allowed on Discord.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and one of the things I also emailed the Sys Internals guys about is I want to have the MC events in Sysmon. That would be really, really nice.
Yeah.
So if you hook the MC ETW provider, you can see basically the script contents that MC expects. And of course, MC can be bypassed. Everybody knows that, but still a lot of things don't do that or don't require it. So you will still have the telemetry. So that will be really interesting to get. And I don't think there is a big burden on Sysmon to do that. So that will be very nice to see. And one other thing which I saw on Twitter a couple of days ago was Casey Smith had the idea to generate a hash for the whole process set. So the process, the command line, and some other variables. And that might also be very interesting for filtering purposes, or even similar commands that are being executed. So that might also be a cool thing to have. Sort of like a JA3 type hash, which is different, of course, than the import hash, but more in terms of
that was what I
execution.
was. I was wondering if you were going that direction, indeed.
Yeah, no, the import hash is also quite nice because you can see altercations between different, malware sets or these kind of things. But running it also, so if you do a large data set analysis, it might be nice to have a hash for similar event types where you can see which process, which parent process, the command line and the parent command line are similar, so that you can at least filter those more rapidly and having a quicker way of digging through the data.
Yeah, but that's pretty easy to create yourself, right? I mean, when you ingest it, you can just generate a hash on the fly.
Yeah, but if the tool itself can generate it, it's easier. Right?
That's definitely true. That's true. But for now, I mean, as a workaround.
As a workaround, it could be possible. Yeah, true. But then you need to have a pipeline in between. So I have some clients that just run everything on Splunk, or same case in Sentinel, and then augmenting that is quite difficult. Then you probably need to have something in between, right? Like a Kafka bus.
Well, there you can just put it in a query.
Yeah, but that's the performance intensive bit.
That defeats the purpose a bit.
Yeah, because I want to have a query that I can just filter a couple of hashes, and then it's less data that has to be processed that way.
True. That would be nice.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I also tried to get Mark so far that he might get into that threat intelligence ETW provider, but that is that's probably a political discussion that he needs to have, because the threat intel provider on Windows basically logs processes, spans, process injection type events, all kinds of things like that. So I'm not sure why it's called threat intelligence, because it's basically just tampering events, but then broader. But it's only allowed to be subscribed to from Microsoft certified AV providers. So Defender for Endpoint uses it, probably CrowdStrike uses it, and some of the other EDRs. But Sysmon technically is not a AV, or but since he has maybe some leverage within Microsoft, he might be able to get that. That would be really nice as well, because then you can see all kinds of process tampering events apart from only the the hollowing and the herpaderping that he now has a logging for.
Okay.
So I'm not having my hopes up too hard there, but I'm hoping for the MC events at least. That would be really nice. Because I use that a lot within Defender, that data stream. It's kind of nice to build all kinds of detections on some either keywords or some functions that are being called by a lot of malware.
Yeah, interesting. But is that then is it sort of a like hooked in a Defender internal API or something? Because it sounds like it's sort of an
no, not
detection
really. So
agent.
the MC is a Windows native one, so it's just there, and it inspects all the scripts that are being executed by PowerShell, WScript, CScript, and all the rest. So all that script data is available in that E2W event. So you can even monitor it yourself by hand, but nobody's gonna do that. It doesn't really scale. So having a tool that can expose that for you would be really nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, would be nice indeed.
Yeah, but well, I need to nag a little bit more maybe, and then he might develop it. Not sure how
maybe.
that works. It's yeah.
So have you ever considered also creating a like an auto not an auto semi-auto tuner for Sysmon? The one that you can just feed some data that is coming back from Sysmon, and that we can see, okay, these are very high intensive events, and then you can spit out configuration to exclude them if you approve.
Yeah, I have, but it's I'm not a great coder, but it shouldn't be that hard. But doing it at scale is harder. So doing it local on one machine is doable. I made a sort of PowerShell script that can do most of that, and then leveraging Carlos's PS Gumshoe set, then it's relatively easy because he already has the modules there to basically generate a Sysmon config from a set of data. So you can do that in a reverse way. So that's relatively doable, I think. But I've never finished it. Not sure if I still have it. So what I recently did is for Splunk clients, I built a dashboard that's now also part of the threat hunting app that I have, where you can just drill down on which machines are the noisiest, and you can just click on graphs and you get all the most noisy events for every event type on those machines. So that's the quicker and easier way to do it, and it's probably also quite simple to build that in Sentinel.
Yeah.
So that then it's a visual thing. It's more useful for most people. But a script would be nice. But then you have to run that locally, right? Having had that on, of course you can create a Jupyter notebook that connects to all kinds of sims. That's a similar idea, I guess.
Yeah, I was thinking about something like that for the bigger sims, that you can just fetch this this table for a while, or this index, and then see if it can spit out some tuning rules, and then you can review them, and would be easier to maintain for people that are not looking into it on a daily basis.
No, that's true. That's definitely true. Yeah. So maybe for Splunk I already did it with a dashboard. I think that's easy enough. Then you still have to create a config. That's true. But a Jupyter notebook could be something. Just creating it for multiple sims is quite a pain, because then you have to port it to all these different query languages, and especially Sentinel is simple because it's always the same table. But for Splunk it can be anywhere, and they rely on these kind of things. But it should be technically possible.
Yeah, I think that the most complex part will probably be that you have the normalization. That will be different for every organization if you're lucky. And then you have to transfer field names again. That probably will be the biggest pain.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so for Sentinel, it's simple because then it's relatively standard. And for Splunk, yeah, the index might be different, but the field normalization, well, I think everybody that uses Sysmon uses that Sysmon TA, so that standard app that does the parsing. So that might be doable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about Sigma, and leveraging something like that to be able to take one type of rule and port to something else? Is that something that would apply here, or maybe not quite the right context? Because I know it's been one thing like, hey, I've got this rule in Sentinel, but I actually want it in Kibana. How do I translate it? Well, you take the current Sentinel rule, and then you build it, you standardize into a regular format, and then you can output it to, pick your output QRadar, Kibana, and do those things. Does Sigma apply in the same sense, or not so much?
I think in terms of Sysmon configs, it's a bit more complicated than that, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, I think you could use a Sigma-like query. It's not the most ideal one, but it's definitely something that might help in terms of getting the data. Then parsing it is something that you can do on a central with a central script that can be, if you pre-parse it with your query, then it's relatively easy to process the rest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone have experience in using Sigma?
Well, I
we used to use it
but
a lot.
what's that?
I do. I'm also a contributor, and we did use it quite a lot in my last job.
Okay, I was also wondering. If I look at it, it seems that you will run into certain functional limits quite fast, because you have all sorts of functions in Splunk and in Sentinel that are not really documented in the Sigma sequence. So I was wondering if anyone experienced in how do you make a sort of hybrid rule then, or how does that work?
Well, for us, yeah, that's true. We used to pretty much develop a custom version of the converter if we encountered a feature that was not covered or already there. But yeah, it's quite limiting in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's also my
'cause
experience. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that is what restraining me from using it. I like to document all the use cases I create in a functional logic first that is more or less vendor agnostic, and then I can just use that document to translate it into any query language we need. But yeah, using it automatically would be nice, but I think in most of the queries it wouldn't work because they are too complex.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, we also ran into that. So we develop a lot of custom detections for our clients, and yeah, it's very hard to. So we primarily work for Splunk and Defender or Sentinel clients. So it's only 2 query languages, but still having the ability to port would be really cool. But the way how we develop our rules is just impossible because of all the native functionality that's incomparable, and it's probably I know that Florian and Thomas are trying to tackle that, but it's really, really complicated because you need to know all the query languages of all the tools then, and then still you probably struggle. So as a starting point, I really like Sigma just to have ideas or even the beginning of a rule, but you definitely need to do a lot of work before you can actually operationalize them, in my experience, just for performance reasons or noise. But still, it might save you some time, or at least give you a good starting idea.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it's a really good thing, I guess, when you don't have a big security team that can tackle these things.
Yeah.
And the different backends have different outputs, or some are better, some are really bad. And also the rule set. Some rules, mostly those that are marked stable, are really good, but a lot of them is like not production ready, in my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, and that's also with the reason probably why it's an open source repo. You can do a pull request, and if it looks syntaxically correct, the likelihood of it being merged is quite there, right? So there's no real quality control up to a certain point. There is, but you can't have everybody. You can't review everything probably. So you don't know how well the research has been done on a lot of those rules before they were submitted, and how solid or how stable the detection then will be. Doing some additional research on top of it would be very much advised.
Yeah, you always have the hazards of your own environment. Some tool that doesn't represent the rest of the environments, and that will trigger a lot of false positives.
Because a lot of people build rules in a lab, right? So that's not comparable to a generic production environment, and not everybody tests it there because they don't have the availability of it or the capability to check that properly. So a lot of the stuff that is submitted, I wouldn't dare running it in a production environment. But still, if you tune it afterwards, you get some pretty good stuff out of it.
Definitely.
And I have to say that that's equally valid for the Microsoft also has a huge Git repo with all kinds of detection logic. The stuff they produce themselves is usually pretty good. But what the community puts in there is sometimes really nice, sometimes not so much, and that's the case for most of those vendors. I think Elastic also has one. Splunk has a repo, but they maintain it themselves only, so then it's a different story. And I do know that team is pretty good in doing research. So they do a solid job and in documenting as well, which is kind of nice that you not only get a rule, but also why the rule's there, what it's looking for, and what you should do with it, which helps a little bit in tuning it later on as well.
Yeah, I think it's a trend coming up because Elastic also has his own GitHub containing a ton of rules.
Yeah.
So it's
all these vendors are creating content now, which is great. Also, if you don't use Splunk or Elastic, you can still look at the rules, read them, and build them in your own environment on your own query language. It's usually quite doable to read the logic.
I always ask myself, like, what will happen in like like there are a lot of rules now out there nowadays, like, but I think there should also be a few that are still more or less secret, because you have the like, if you have a smart attacker, they will just research their defenders and look at those rules and say, oh, they might have these detections, and then try to evade those. So I was also like, it's a bit of a mixed world in that case.
Yeah, I'm not sure what my opinion there is. I think I'd rather see everything open and make it extremely hard to bypass, but then the content should be really good. But I'm saying that, but at the same point, we release some rules for free. But we also sell a lot more, so we have quite a large repository of content where we don't publicize. But that's primarily that's not that we don't want to share it with the world, but then we also need to get some return on our time spent, right? So this is a business model there. So that's slightly different. But I think if you have coming back to the point of having it out there, so if you have enough pretty good rules, it's pretty hard to bypass everything. So the likelihood of missing something is there, but if you have enough really good detections, then you'll probably catch them at some point somewhere. And then having good IR capabilities and maybe some additional visibility will get you quite far in terms of finding out what happened on that box.
Yeah, and of course, if you consider 90% of the attacks are random ones, so they don't care about your environment. So
Yeah,
those
up until the
will be
point when
detected.
they understand whether they can make money off you or not. Yeah, so those definitely should be able to detect. If you look at the Diver reports, which are really cool, you get a lot of repetitive stuff in there. There's always a defined, and there's always some basic reconnaissance work that they do in some others commands. So apparently not every EDR picks them up. So having a detection for those will be already kind of nice to have some basic attackers getting in there that they're only there for the ransom. And then you can do the same with some of the other ones. All the industry reports are coming next month probably with Red Canary and the DBIR and all the other ones showing what is prevalent in the last year. That might also help if you don't detect it yet. At least make sure you have those.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that sums it up quite nicely. You gotta have the public ones, and if you're susceptible to a specific attack by either APT, like an APT or something close to it, then it might be good to have some secret detections and maybe even some canaries or something.
Yeah,
that help you
definitely.
in detecting them.
It's always useful, definitely. Yeah.
I wonder how long it will take before, like, currently you hear, well, not nowadays. You hear the new types of companies coming into the news being ransomware. But still, a lot of the small companies don't even get the news. They don't hit the news yet. But I wonder how long it will take before all those smaller companies will start investing in cybersecurity more and more, and what it will do to the market. So it will be a busy day. I think it's already understaffed, but it will be a lot more in the future.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. A lot of those smaller companies don't even run a proper EDR or something like that. Yeah, it was great seeing you, Nick. Yeah. See you next time. Nice of you to join again.
Thanks, guys. Awesome discussion. Can't wait for the next one.
Back on your pull requests and your colleagues. I went through it though before you run.
Yeah.
The only thing is, I probably want to do a selective merge or something, because I like the tactic idea in there, but not the name, because it's a bit too much info for me.
Yeah, and we're going to review it as well on our side, because it needs a good refresh anyway. So we're going to go through kind of revamp anyways on what that looks like, and because there was a lot of work and that was quite a while ago. So we'll take another run at it, get up to speed on with the latest MITRE and how that actually plays out, and do some tweaks. But yeah, absolutely would love your feedback and what you'd want to do there. So looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah, feel free to reach out on that one. We might be able to split the work a little bit or something.
Sure.
Before you go, Nick, can you summarize a bit what you built in the PR?
What we wanted to do is, I can't remember our main use case, but quickly, we've developed two, actually, we have a PowerShell script that will go through and check your Sysmon config, and it'll look for proper MITRE attack map rules. And so it scrapes the XML, the config file, finds the attack IDs, and then it compares it to what's on the current MITRE GitHub repo where all the rules are at. So we can say, okay, this technique, this ID, let's compare it to see if it's actually valid, and then we can pull in all the information from MITRE, the technique name, tactic, sub-technique, all that information, and see how well it compares to make sure that's even a valid rule to begin with. But doing this, we kind of found where we can see and map out all of the detection rules and the MITRE attack mappings to all the rules inside your Sysmon config, but then also see if they're valid or not, but also and you can see it on the GitHub repo out there, but you can also build the JSON file based off of your Sysmon config and upload that into your MITRE attack tool to see what your Sysmon config maps to as well. But it also does do a little printout. If you're running on Windows, it'll do a printout of a table to kind of see all those things. Maybe I can give like a little live demo on it sometime. But
Yeah.
it's a script just to quickly run through your config and see how well does it map, if there's any issues with it, and see where you might be missing maybe appropriate documenting the tags and stuff as well. Because I think we found some in there that the techniques were sort of in there, but they weren't quite right, and so it showed an invalid tag, if you will. But anyway, so we just created some PowerShell scripts to play with that, and that's all out there. So you can go grab that today, grab that PowerShell script. It's just not committed to the repo, but the pull request is out there. Download that PowerShell script, run it against your Sysmon config. You can either do the one compiled config with everything in it, or you can point to your modular config with all the XML files, and it'll check all those as well. So, but yeah, take a run at that, and yeah, like it says, compares your Sysmon config to MITRE ATT&CK. And it pulls the latest version of MITRE ATT&CK to run off of. But something we kind of threw together, just initial run through, but definitely open for feedback and thoughts and what we can do there.
Cool. I'll keep that in mind. Thanks for explaining.
Yeah, no problem. But I do got to run here. Thanks, guys. It was awesome.
Yeah,
We'll
thanks
catch you
for
later.
joining, man. Have a great
See you.
day. Take
Bye.
care. All right. Hey, Melvin's here.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, buddy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, dude. How about you?
I'm good, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, I haven't streamed in like a month
Years.
or so.
Yeah.
Years.
Feels like a year. Yeah.
Q4, man. Q4. That's all I'm saying.
So Martin is keeping you busy then.
Yeah, I accepted some like double time work as well. So I'm technically doing like 2 gigs a day or a week,
Oh, wow.
which is yeah, it's I said yes. So I'm not going to say it's rough, but it's productive. That's what it is. It's really productive right now, so it's good though.
Nice, man. Cool of you to join. You joined at the end though, so or close to the end.
Yeah, no,
but
yeah.
still nice. Nice to catch up a little bit. Good to see you're still alive.
Yeah, I'm alive for sure. No, yeah, I missed it. Darn, I'll pick it up next time.
Yeah, no worries, man. No worries. It's always fun. And for now it's mainly an open chat, but at some point it might also be nice. I'll also reach out into the community to see if people want to see demos or want to see something live or want to discuss something. I mean, this is nice because I don't have to prep anything. It's just show up and see who is there and talk, which is kind of chill. But I also don't mind doing some additional stuff. Last week I was presenting at a conference together with a former colleague. He built a NIM plant or an implant in NIM. And we did some live purple teaming on the conference at a booth, so that was also kind of fun to do. So that's more YOLO, but maybe we can do that as well, dude. If you build some nice C# tool again, we can see how Sysmon picks it up.
That'd be cool for sure to try to do some demos. Like, I haven't really been deving much publicly. We have some internal stuff, but other than that, I've been pretty just working basically. I'm expecting to get more back to the normal flow next year, early next year. Q4 is always like this for me. You have so much to do, and then you sort of it's just right after the BlackCon and DevCons. There's so much to read up on and to catch up on. So you just get a bit exhausted. So
and now you feel
down. Yeah, Q4 is just.
It's crazy. It's the same here. Everybody needs to empty their budgets and want some last minute work done. So it's but that's always the case. Usually Q1 is slow, but at least for the next Q1 coming, it's not the case for me or for us. I think we're completely packed somewhere until summer already.
Oh yeah, we're booked way out as well. It's just insane right now. Absolutely insane. I guess glad to see the demand though, because it means that a lot of companies are doing stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
But still, it's just insane. As you say, it's yeah. I had a Norwegian customer reach out, and they wanted to do testing before the end of the year. I'm like,
End of 2023? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you haven't really done much testing before, have you, huh? Because Nope. I don't think anybody anywhere right now can do anything before like February, because it's just, yeah, they wanted like a bunch of stuff done basically the like the upcoming 3 weeks, and I'm like, yeah, no, sorry. We could get the bill out if it's like a budget thing. I can get you
Exactly.
to pay it before the end of the year, but I have like no chance to do anything before February. It's just nuts
And
right
it's
now.
the same is for all proper teams probably, right? If they're all booked.
I know a couple of smaller Norwegian firms as well, and they're just the same. It's just booked out. Too much to do. Which again is great, but I mean, yeah. If I were somebody who would want to order, anything offensive, or I guess defensive as well, just plan ahead. Start looking at those 2022 tests right now.
Yeah. Sadly, it's the case. I don't like it from a personal perspective, that I have to say no to people that I can't help them yet, right? From a business
Right.
perspective, it's great because it's flourishing. But it's also not nice to say no, and everybody has to do it. So it's not that they can run to your competitor generally.
That's what I was, I obviously I didn't tell the client that, but I know that, yeah, sure, you could try to contact 5 other Norwegian or any other company. It's going to be the same stuff. So
Yeah, and I might
sorry.
get lucky that somebody else canceled
Yeah.
something, or they have some spare time. But generally, it's rare. Yeah.
Or they
Yeah.
will go to some company that's a lot more shit, and then you have to
Yeah.
clean up the mess later.
Yeah, that's
sure,
that happens too. Yeah, and that you can't discourage them from that, but it's it's sometimes sad to see people spend money on terrible support.
Yeah, I always I was in a small piece of my career. I had a small sales role at a identity and access management company, and there you had this for governments, they have to apply like they do is this, how do you call it in English? Do you know that, Olaf? Ik weet het niet. I can't even remember the Dutch word for it. That's nice. Well, they're obligated to put out the assignment, and then
So it's
everyone
a
can
tender.
write their a tender. That was it. Thank you. But they always get won by the people that just give the cheapest number, and then afterwards, when everything is won, they just say, yeah, but we can't do this. You have to pay us more, and then we'll do it again. We'll do it for you, and then they will end up paying more in the end.
Yeah,
It's
I don't like those public tenders at all, because usually it really depends though. Sometimes it works. We also have to do them, for instance, for the Tiber engagements, so the very large red teams, and there it's better because procurement already knows that it's cheapest is not always the best in general, but for some of the other ones, then there's always somebody saying they can do it for less, and just say that they can do it, but not always can prove it. So it's
There's definitely a lot of competition on the market, a lot of new actors coming in. I think actually, in my opinion, some of the worst cases are the big consulting companies wanting to get into the area, and they just hire a bunch of people, and then they go hardcore into everything, and they, most, I'm not gonna say most of the time, but a lot of the time they don't even know what they're selling, and the customer doesn't necessarily know what they're supposed to get, and it's like a whole price mess where, we see this a lot in Norway, where the customer wants an internal test, and then somebody comes up and say, yeah, we can do the internal test for $2,000. And we're like, yeah, say what now? And they're just doing an automated scan, selling it as an internal test, and then we're trying to explain to the customer why our test for 10 or 12K for that week is an actual test, and then the customer just goes for the money because compliance or whatever. So it's way better in the US though. I gotta give credit to a lot of US companies. They're like way better at this. They actually care. I don't know if it's like the threat level is higher and that makes more sense, but they generally care a lot more about this stuff than a lot of the Nordic countries. They just they don't have that much of a relationship to it. At least from what I've seen. Obviously, that's gonna depend, but yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to compare. We have a couple of customers in the Nordic region that are quite mature, but that's probably just a few. I don't know. It's the same in the Netherlands, right? So there's quite a bunch of companies that do have the maturity and the understanding that they actually need to throw some money at it to properly fix it. But the compliance only, the check in the box companies are also still there. Fortunately, I don't have to work for those because we're too busy. We can say, okay, we don't have time. But yeah, that's I mean that's always the case. I think that will be there always, where people just want to have that green check mark thingy and go about their business for another year.
Yeah, that sounds about right. For sure. And yeah, no, there's always going to be different. And we have some, in Norway, so we'll have some big mature companies that even do, proper physicals and proper red teams and stuff like that. But it's just so rare to go by. And yeah, no. Like me and Oddvar were like on the talk. He was holding a talk. I can't recall like what conference it was, but it was in Norway, not too far back. And like we talked to a bunch of the security people from. What would be a state essentially in Norway, like it isn't called a state, but that's the closest relation to like a state in the country. And we talked to them about TrustedSec and the security, information security community, and for them it's just like totally blind, have no relationship to it. They have never done any proper testing before. It's just all sort of manned by this poor one IT guy internally. And it just shows how little I guess the Norwegian government puts restrictions on these companies or demands in terms to get stuff tested, and it's really concerning. Like a lot of these states run their own water plants and power plants and stuff like that, right? So they're attached to critical infrastructure, and it's just. Nah,
That's scary.
maybe it's just me it's so scary, or maybe it's just me that don't have any faith to any of it, but it's just me, yeah. Like...
Yeah, I can recall the Norsk Hydro thing that was there 2 years ago,
Yeah.
I think, or 3 maybe
Right.
even. That
And
was
the
one of
worst
the
or
largest companies in Norway, right?
Right, it for sure was. And what's actually interesting about that is that they came out on top of that, funnily enough. Like they won that. Like their stock and everything was up after the whole thing.
Yeah,
Because
well, the
less
day
than
after
24
already, yeah.
Yeah, because less than 24 hours after the compromise, they just like, hey, we got compromised. We're handling it. We're not gonna pay ransom. End of story.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like
I really like that transparency, and probably they hid stuff for reasons, but they were quite transparent and quite honest in a lot of things, which was really refreshing. It was really cool to see, and you saw that in the stock price. I also saw it where they already started. They dipped the first day, and the next day they were just above the normal rate already, where they were still.
Yeah. And that transparency is just so important for other companies to see as well, that this is how you're supposed to handle it, instead of going dark, not talking about it, not allowing people to see you fail, so they also should maybe take some steps, So it's like, that's technically, obviously it wasn't supposed to happen, but technically it's like a victory story, or like a good example of how to handle something, I would guess, even though they got compromised and obviously shouldn't have been in the first place, but that's how it goes.
Yeah, they might have gone unlucky. I never read I'm not sure if there was a public report about how it happened and these kind of things, but it's interesting to see for some of those companies. I've been involved in a couple of those similar sized large incident response gigs. It's a lot of work, man, and it's kind of nice to see some of those companies then really own up to it and be honest about it. I mean, it's gonna leak out mostly anyway, so you can better just own up.
I mean, the incident response people are the true heroes of this industry. Yeah. Like, seriously. Sure, I can go in, I can break stuff, and I can hopefully make the client fix stuff. but those are the ones who actually save like the family companies from going under. And yeah, it's just they do the amazing 24/7 on-call job. It's just I think that
Yeah,
would be something I would
it's
like to
brutal.
do when I'm like I'm not gonna say when I'm like done, but when I'm where I want to be in offensively, I think that would be like the ultimate goal. Goal should be to go to incident response, take all like the expertise and the experience, and put it into proper good use in incident response.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, same here. I'm blue team already, but I'm not doing much with instant response yet. But I hope to be doing that more and more in the upcoming years. So let's see how that goes. I think it's a really
it's
noble
fun and very
thing to do.
stressful at the same time. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
Gotta be
definitely.
But it's cool. So that's interesting about a lot of those red team people as well that are switching to blue, right? Where they after a couple of years of boning everything, they think, okay, now I done my thing there. Let's try to fix more, which is interesting.
Yeah.
At my last company, there was quite a bunch of red teamers also doing the standby for incident response, so they could chip in at least. And that usually those guys or girls, for that matter, are really really good at incident response as well, because they know what can be done, right? So that sometimes they need a sort of nudge into where to find it, but generally that's good. That's the easy bit.
Yeah, I think in incident response it's also good to have a sort of purple response team.
Yeah,
Because then you have the best of both worlds.
Definitely. That attacker mindset is super valuable.
No.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that has to be the end goal. Like, it must be extremely like energy draining though. Like having to be on call and just jumping into it, and the stress, and probably talking to the clients who are just out of their mind, stressed and don't know what to do. And it's again, major MVPs of our industry are the people handling those sort of stuff. So.
Yeah, it is. It's a rough life, that too, especially if you work for a larger firm and you have to travel a lot. It's usually, you don't want to have a girlfriend and kids lying around because you rarely see them in some cases where you're gone for weeks or sometimes months. So that's the downside of it, yeah.
It's Mauricio, man. Sorry, I was couldn't connect before.
Yeah, no worries.
I just wanted to say, I've thought about this before, kind of what you guys are talking about, and I kind of believe that you kind of want to do that early in your career, right? Like,
yes.
Be able to, like, you get a phone call on December 23rd, and you're gonna have to jump on this plane and help and image and whatever. Like, you have to be prepared for that. So maybe at some point in our lives, we are no longer prepared to be that flexible. To just get on a plane on December 23rd and, work on an incident for 2 weeks and come back. I kind of would have wanted, to have that experience as well. But honestly, I kind of think that, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to have that experience.
Well, I totally get that. No. But at the same time, while I think being in incident response is such a big deal that you have to have like a major set of experience before going into it. But yeah, like lifestyle wise, it would make much more sense that it's something you would go into early in your career, where you might have a girlfriend or whatever, but you probably don't have kids, and you're hyped and you're flexible, so you can do all this, as you say, jump on the plane, whatever. But experience-wise, it might not be a good deal because I don't know. I'm not incident response, but my understanding is that if you're like inexperienced, or if you fuck up during incident response, you can make it a hell of a lot worse in an active case. If you accidentally jump around with some high privilege account, or I don't know. I'm just I guess spitballing here, but you will probably know a lot more about this, Olaf. How
I think there's a sort of middle ground there where you also learn a shit ton. So if you're part of a solid team, they can quickly boost you into some basic skills, and then you can quite rapidly expand onwards. So, but then the mindset is probably a good thing, right? Not every SOC analyst is a good incident responder or threat hunter. You really have to have that I don't know, that inquisitive mindset that also hackers have, where you you have a need to find out, and you have also the capabilities of actually digging through whatever data set you get in front of you to actually do something substantial with it. But to Mauritius' point as well, I'm glad that, I mean, we don't offer incident response at Falcon Force. We do it for some of our clients, but then in a different capacity than a real incident response firm. So we support them, we do as much as we can, but we don't do 24/7 standby and all that other stuff, which I'm quite happy about, because it's I've done that for years, and it's quite you remain restless. Even if you're on call, you don't have to do anything. You're aware that anything can happen at a certain point, and you always have to be ready for it, which is it's a really nice feeling if it's not there as well.
Yeah, and it always happens at the moment when you're not wanting to go away.
Yeah,
Like,
quite often.
You're out at dinner or...
Yeah, I once had it when I was in a discotheque.
Oh, really?
I had to leave my friends. Okay, guys, I have to go. Yeah, so that happens. But I mean, it's also interesting. You learn so much.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I've only had some really small incidents from small business companies, but they were fun as well. Like web shells being generated and those thingies. It's a pretty cool to experience and then help them get them back on track again. That really gives a warm feeling when you succeed.
I really wonder, we all know what happened across all industries in March 2020, everything stopped, right? But I wonder what happened with this IR incidents. Like, did they actually stop traveling and then to maybe just ship disk images or hard drives, or were they actually just traveling? I mean, I have no idea. That's an interesting question for me.
Yeah. I think they still just travel, to be honest.
Probably, right?
Yeah. Some did. Yeah, some actually had to do with remote. I heard some stories where they had to be quite creative. And technically you can do quite a bit, but then you need to have some people on the ground that can plug in USB sticks, these kind of things, then boot into a local or a small operating system that actually has the capacity to access the disk and then upload it to somewhere in the cloud where it can be processed. So generally there's a bunch of people still flying, or were still flying. But not everybody could do that, especially internationally, right? Where the US and Europe were also cut off from each other. So these had to be quite creative. No, and there was a while where there were no flights at all, indeed. So then it was being very creative, and then that Velociraptor that we earlier talked about came in. Can probably come in handy as well, where you can do quite a bit, not full forensic images, but there's other tools for that as well that you can use. Boot from USB and then have it upload. But then you need to convince some smart people, or at least capable people, of doing these kind of things remotely. So it's a whole different ball game than. But all fun. Let's set up a new date. I think all the energy is mostly gone for this call, at least. Which is good.
Running out of topics.
Yeah, we're running out of topics as well, and I'm getting tired. So let's wrap up for today. It's pretty cool for you guys to hang out again. Definitely come back next time. I'll probably plan it for the beginning of next year, since all the holidays are coming up. So enjoy those. Always feel free to reach out on either Discord or Twitter if you want to discuss anything else. I saw your DM as well, Jeffrey, so I'll also get back to that. I didn't get to it yet due to travel.
Yeah, no worries.
Have a great evening or the rest of the day, at least for you, Mauricio. I'm not sure where the rest is based, but enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week even. And see you next time.
Likewise. Good one.
Yep.
Bye.
See you all up.
Bye, guys.
See you all.
Bye bye.